contact with subjects, both in the intervention and in the AL group. I don't think if I said, but the allocation was 2 to 1 in the caloric restriction versus the ad libitum lifestyle group. The assessments and the interventions were very intensive. There was a toolbox developed for identifying individuals that were having trouble meeting their weight loss goals. We developed a weight loss curve for each individual based upon their own individual characteristics, their assessments, and they were constantly reminded of what their weight loss goal was. This is in the intervention group now. And if they fell above the 80% level on the weight loss curve, that is, they were losing less than 20% of their projected weight loss curve, or if they exceeded it, they were above the 10th percentile, or they went below 18.6, I think, on the BMI scale, then they were asked to stop in that instance from doing caloric restriction until they came back into above 18.6. If they were on the other end, the toolbox was brought out and a number of the tools were employed to get them back into the zone. These were the baseline characteristics for the participants. They're divided by women on the left and men on the right. You can see that the recruitment was 2 to 1 women to men. Not designed that way, but that's the way it ended up. We had a mean age of approximately 37. The body mass indices were on average about 25, which is what you would expect with a stratified recruitment. Percent body fats were different between men and women, so women were higher than men, as you might imagine. A mean of 36 for women and 26 for men. Free fat mass is listed, as well as fat-free mass. This is pertinent. The blood pressure, mean blood pressures were about 110/70. The mean fasting blood glucoses were 80. The mean HDLs were 53, 52 for women, and about 40 for men. The LDL cholesterols were approximately 100, and the triglycerides were higher for men than women. Women were about 90, and men were about 130 or 140. This was a very healthy group. They're young, normal body mass, basically, and metabolically healthy. This is also very important to understand. This is an example of the testing scheme that was done at baseline, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, and 24 months for the CR group, and at baseline, 12 months, and 24 months for the AL group. So when matching caloric restriction to AL, the options are baseline, 12 months, and 24 months. Okay? There are additional assessments done for the CR group at 6 months and 18 months. These are the samples that will be available if you want to do sampling. There was an intensive testing schedule of 5 days, 2 as outpatients and 3 as inpatients. You can see there's 24-hour core body temperature, 24-hour urine was collected, muscle and fat biopsies were obtained. The RMRs, the DEXA, the OGTT, the surveys, food records, DLW. There was a 14-hour DLW period done at baseline, 6 months, I believe, 12 months, 18 months, and 24 months. So we have all those data. VO2 max was performed, strength testing, physical activity recall, and food records. So all those data are available as part of the database. I'm going to pause for questions at this point. Yes, in the back. Microphone, please.
So for the 24-hour urine sample and what was the core body temperature as well?
Core body temperature data are available, yes.
Yeah. So are they the aggregate of the 24 hours, or are they spaced out like?
Well, 24-hour urine is a 24-hour urine. So,
Okay. No, I asked because we do sleep and circadian work. So if it was time-wise, then we could run a circadian analysis.
yes, no, we can't do that for the urine. Oh. Yes, Ross. George?
Okay, you go ahead.
I was just wondering about the
Wait.
microphone. The body temperature thing, because I was just talking with Julie, and we didn't see a difference in body temperature in the monkeys. There are early periods of adaptation during that weight loss, but you see some differences there. You see the metabolic rate differences and sometimes the body temperature differences, but that all kind of settles out in the longer term. And I think overall, in both studies, we didn't have a body temperature thing. Even when you do see it in the mice, so it's very small. It's hard to assign. It's hard to know if it's meaningful in terms of the biology. I mean, we know from experiments with thermoneutrality that you can cause all these broad-scale changes and things that impinge on longevity at normal temperatures don't at thermoneutrality. So there's definitely something there, but the types of the magnitude of the difference we see with caloric restriction when we see it, it's very small. Yeah.
So you're anticipating the results. We did not see anything in our study.
After the early phase.
Yes.
So I was wondering, in the early days, was there any systematic studies of comparative gerontology with respect to the two major ideas, resting metabolic rate and core body temperature? You look short-lived mammals, long-lived mammals, intermediate. What's the current state of the knowledge of that?
This is not my area, so I'm going to turn to Roz.
I'm not sure that that's been done. I mean, so that kind of work was more like 1980s, 1990s, and I bet you there's a bunch of stuff. It's just not readily available online, and someone's going to publish it in Science and say it's brand new. But I don't know. I don't know how rigorously. Evan, do you have any insights on this?
No, John Speakman wrote a very nice review related to, especially regarding Sorry. There's a very nice review by John Speakman a few years ago, maybe 2013. Very long review on all the possible mechanisms by which caloric restriction works, and he reviewed that up to that point. It's a very thorough review.
What's the bottom line in terms of?
He says there's not a strong case for either.
Yeah, I that would be my guess. So that would challenge the underlying concept that that's the canonical way to look at extension of lifespan.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. That the theory's been somewhat revised. I would also add that John's team has produced this amazing series of papers that very beautifully catalogues all kinds of biological outcomes of caloric restriction. I think it's like he's up to paper 14 in the series or something now. I get them all muddled up because I review a lot of them. But it's absolutely beautiful. They measure all kinds of parameters in different tissues. And I think the body of that work will help to inform us where to go in terms of what are the real biological targets and where we're likely to see conservation. And then with comparison with the studies that Julie and I have done, I think we should be in pretty decent shape to pluck out in a candidate-based way which aspects of the current view of how CR is working can be explored in human specimens.
Okay. I know this is going slow, but I think it's important for people to have understanding of the underlying assessments so that you can design your experiments. So, as I mentioned before, there was a 2-to-1 allocation of the 25% caloric restriction and the ad libitum group. Now, these weight curves. So the gold standard method that we used to measure total energy expenditure and by extension to determine energy intake was doubly labeled water. Those studies are done in batches. They take a period of time to operate. I think we were talking about a 1-month turnaround during the study. That is not quick enough to intervene on a participant when they're off the curve. So we felt that we had to have some measure of caloric restriction that was readily accessible and adaptable. So we chose the weight curves based upon partly the Pennington experience, common knowledge about the relationship between weight change and caloric intake and expenditure, and a lot of seminal work that had been done by Kevin Hall and Diane Thomas and others to relate weight change to caloric intake and expenditure. So Carl developed, based upon the phase 1 data, a set of curves that would describe these relationships and that could be developed on an individual basis. These are the weight curves that the subjects were exposed to. So we did not counsel on the base of known energy